So good morning, everyone. We're the middle of December. We've got a couple of weeks left until it is the new year. My goodness me. I wanted to talk today. My subject has morphed a little bit, I guess, as I prepared. Originally, I was going to talk about goal setting because as we're approaching 2022, it's really important for us to consider what our goals are going to be with our business and with the year ahead. I always like to spend these last few weeks, if not longer, really delving into my aspirations for the coming year and making it clear and concrete in my mind's eye and putting plans in place for what I want to execute for the coming year. As I was going down that road, my journey took me on a slightly different path. So we're going to go on a slightly different take today. You've heard me talk about this statistic a lot. I've shared it frequently. The number of contacts it takes for us to have with someone before they get to a yes, 7 to 12 times is the average, according to the National Sales Association of America. 7 to 12 contacts before someone gets to a yes. Well, how did I have that thought occur when I'm talking about goals? For me, for so many of us, when it comes to setting our goals for the Niken business, a lot of it ends up, if we start with the end in mind, but then drill it down, reverse engineer our goals to monthly, weekly, and then daily activities, what we find is that we need to spend a lot of time talking to people and building new relationships. That's really where it all begins, isn't it? Is right there. I was talking to my son the other day and he shared a really profound thought. He said, I've mentioned this on a couple of previous calls, how he and I will have this weekly accountability session together. He's away at college, but every Sunday afternoon, he phones in and we have a gut check. How's he been doing? What's his week been like? What personal goals has he been working on and how is he achieving them? And he's learning so much. One thing that he said, and it kind of blew my mind, was he said, goals aren't really a means to an end. They're a means to a means. It's an interesting thought, that, isn't it? He said, goals are a means to a means. He said, if a goal is a means to an end, he said, what typically happens, and he's really into personal fitness. He's a fitness instructor. That he qualified for that years ago before he even went to college. But he's really into physical fitness and health and nutrition, what have you. He said, for many people, if they set a goal to lose weight and have that as an end result, to have a certain amount of weight lost, he says, when they achieve their goal, what do they often do? They reward themselves with food. Yeah, he says, which destroys the end result. He said, so if you have your goal being an end result, he says, when you get there, he says, you often destroy the outcome. He said, what we need to do is recognize that when we achieve our end result that we're striving for, that we're now a new person. We're now a new creature. And as a result of that, we should have some other goals that we're setting to continue to move forwards. Yeah. And so our goals become a means to a means that see us continually progressing and evolving and developing versus being a means to an end where we reward ourselves with the wrong activities that often see our net result compromised as a consequence. So that got me thinking, what are some essential means to a means in building our business? Because it is all about progress, isn't it? It is all about becoming. Humans being more is a progressive realization of our best selves. That's what it's all about. And our business should be a reflection of that. And so I want to come back to that statistic. 7 to 12 contacts results in us getting to a yes. But for most people, they stop before they get to 7. Not because of lack of skill, but because they just don't like the process of persisting. And so they quit and they give up. They don't make that next critical step. So I want to talk about then one of the critical things that we need to do as business builders in building these relationships, because that's what it's about. If we're going to have 7 to 12 contacts and reaching out to people, connecting with them, and doing that on a regular, consistent basis, because that is really the heart of what we're doing in NECAM. The more relationships we build, the more persuasive our opportunity becomes, the more people we get to yes, the more people we get to yes, the better outcomes in our business. There is a big part of that. So to that end, I want to ask a question. What is one of the biggest challenges we have in this relationship building process? Often when it's a business building experience where we're building these relationships of trust in a business environment, which is what we're doing here, one of the challenges that we face that is really difficult for many of us is knowing how to change someone's mind. Wouldn't you agree? When we first set out and we talk to them and we explain our opportunity, we explain our products, we share with them what we're doing and what we're engaged in, how many people at first blush immediately go, sounds great, count me in? Not many. Yeah, not many at all, which means there is a process of conversion, so to speak, where we help that person's mind change from where it is to where it needs to be. Yeah, and we're right in saying where it needs to be, because what we have to offer is genuinely something of value, especially when we're driven by how can I help you achieve your goals or meet your needs. If there is a deficiency or a lack in what they are doing or achieving in their lives, where is the problem? Where is the point of pain? And how can I help provide a solution? Now, even when we have solutions, people don't always want to be open-minded to it, right? So how do we help that make that shift happen? That's what I want to talk about today, because if we can grasp this and build that into what we're doing and building our businesses, we can get better results with the people that we're talking with. Because like I said, we've got to have lots of contacts. How do we make those contacts count? And how do we get that with more people so that we can get better results in our business? So I'm going to start out, it's going to be a little bit of an inverted triangle today, where I'm going to start out wide, yeah, at the top, and talk philosophically about the challenge that we face. But then I'm going to distill it down into some tangible specifics, actionable items that we can take away and say, this makes sense, I understand, this is what I can do to help people make better decisions. Okay, does that sound good? So I want to start out by sharing a great quote by the economist J.K. Galbraith. He once said, faced with a choice between changing one's mind and proving there is no need to do so, almost everyone gets busy with the proof. Isn't that true? Isn't that true? It's so frustrating, but it's the reality. Leo Tolstoy said something even more bolder, more brazen. He said, the most difficult subjects, can be explained to the most slow-witted man if he has not formed any idea of them already. But the simplest thing cannot be made clear to the most intelligent man if he is firmly persuaded that he knows already, without a shadow of a doubt, what is laid before him. Wouldn't you agree that that's true? It's interesting, isn't it? That facts don't necessarily change our minds. And yet when we are engaged in trying to persuade people, we often immediately start with trying to present the facts. Yet there is plenty of evidence all around us that facts don't always sell. If that's the case, there wouldn't be many smokers in the world. But there are, and they know the truth, what that does to them, but they don't quit. They keep smoking. So facts don't always sell. So what can we do then here to really address this and recognize, first of all, why is that the case, and what is the better solution if sharing the facts isn't always the answer? Well, humans need a reasonable degree of accuracy, I think, of their view of the world in order to survive. However, they also need other things. We're herd animals, aren't we? We want to fit in, we want to bond with others, we want to earn the respect and approval of our peers. So this is also an important part. In fact, if we look at the evolutionary journey our ancestors have all been on, what we will see is we've all come from tribes. We've lived in this tribal environment for millennia, haven't we? And being separated from the tribe, or worse, being cast out, was like a death sentence, wasn't it? So this is an interesting point. Whilst it's also important to know the truth, it's also important to belong. And the challenge that we often face is, if what I believe conflicts with my social pressures or my social standing, I will choose in many instances, the decision that will keep me socially integrated with my peers versus what is right. We often compromise what is right for the sake of social acceptance. Yeah. Now that sounds crazy, but it's really true. In many circumstances, social connection is far more helpful to our daily lives than understanding the truth of a particular idea or concept. So in fact, I'll share a quote here. Steven Pinker, who's a Harvard psychologist, put it this way. He said, people are embraced or condemned according to their beliefs. So one function of the mind may be to hold beliefs that bring the belief holder the greatest number of allies, protectors, or disciples, rather than beliefs that are most likely to be true. That's a sobering thought, that, isn't it? I'll share that again because I think that's really profound. People are embraced or condemned according to their beliefs. So one function of the mind may be to hold beliefs that bring the belief holder the greatest number of allies, protectors, or disciples, rather than beliefs that are most likely to be true. What he's saying here is we don't always believe things because they are correct. Sometimes we believe things because they simply make us look good to the people that we care about. It's true, that, isn't it? Social pressure, social norms, social expectations play a significant part in shaping what we choose to believe, even when the facts make it very clear that what is right may not be lying where our social beliefs want us to go. It takes a lot of courage to step away from a social network and say, I'm going to believe something very different to everyone else. It takes real leadership to do that, real courage. And most people don't do that. So to that end, let's talk about what can we do then to make that shift? Because false beliefs can be useful in a social sense, even if they are not useful in a factual sense. For lack of a better phrase, factually false, but socially accurate is often something that we embrace, isn't it? Factually false, but socially accurate. When we have to choose between the two, people often select their friends and their family over the facts. Have you seen that as you've been building your business? As you've worked with people in your warm market? Have you found that in spite of the evidence that you present to people, they will tend to choose their friends and family and social comfort over what is right? Yeah, so again, this principle of trying to persuade with facts isn't necessarily the solution. So what is the solution then? Here it is. Facts don't change our mind. Friendship does. Friendship does. I'll repeat that because this is the big takeaway for today. Facts don't change our minds. Friendship does. Now we can apply this in business. We can certainly apply it in other relationships that we have outside of our businesses, where there may be a difference of opinion or view that is causing conflict in a very important, valuable relationship to us. And so often we might want to lean in with facts to persuade. Perhaps, for example, with a wayward child, yeah? What do we tend to do there when a child is going the wrong way and making the wrong choices? We try to convince them of the error of their ways and put all of that pressure on them to be right, when what we need to do most is love them, be their friend. And as a consequence of that, this is what starts to happen. When we have, because truth can often be found, or opinions, I should say, on truth can often be found on a sliding scale. Yeah. So if we, for example, are at 1 and someone else is at 10, getting them to jump from 10 to 1 rarely happens. It rarely happens. The best results we get are when someone is at a 6 and we want to get them to a 5. Yeah, where there is closer proximity of persuasion that can be done there. And what happens? We don't jump from one point to the next. We slide. We slide, don't we, on that journey from changing opinions. And we do that through the relationships that we form that are friendships. So a key takeaway for today is, what are some things that I can do in my business or in those relationships that are most precious to build those relationships and demonstrate friendship and meaningful, trustworthy rapport with those that are on my contact list, so that I can use that in an appropriate way to help people see the results of their decisions, to help them make better informed choices, and to move forward in business building decisions or as a customer or what have you. Now, I love this example here, and it's harder to do this right now. You know, Barbara was just saying, Barbara Richmond, at the beginning of our call before we hit record, how they're going into another lockdown in her area, how hard it is to get together, and it's just frustrating, isn't it? But let's perhaps pull this principle apart just a little bit. There was a British philosopher by the name of Alan de Botton who suggested that simply sharing meals with those that we disagree with can have a profound impact. And this is what he said. And I love this. Listen carefully. He said, sitting down at a table with a group of strangers has the incomparable and odd benefit of making it a little more difficult to hate them with impunity. It's true, isn't it? He said, prejudice and ethnic strife feed off abstraction. However, the proximity required by a meal, something about handing dishes around, unfurling napkins at the same moment, even asking a stranger to pass the salt, disrupts our ability to cling to the beliefs that the outsiders who wear unusual clothes and speak in distinctive accents deserve to be sent home or assaulted. He said, for all the large-scale political solutions which have been proposed to solve ethnic conflict, there are few more effective ways to promote tolerance between suspicious neighbors than to force them to eat supper together. I love that. Isn't it true? He said, he went on to say, perhaps it's not the difference, but distance that breeds tribalism and hostility. As proximity increases, so does understanding. Abraham Lincoln, what did he once say? I don't know that. I don't like that man. I must get to know him better. Yeah, I don't like that man. I must get to know him better. Often a simple way of building relationships is to do something as simple and practical as sharing a meal with someone. Now, we can't always do that with everyone. We can't have hundreds of people over to our homes for meals, right? We can't necessarily do that, but there is something about proximity. There is something about sharing and giving and being of service to someone else that helps us to build friendships and rapport with others. So as we look at those on our contact lists, there may be some that live close by that we can say, hey, I'm going to invite them over for a meal, or we're going to have an activity, a wine and cheese evening, or whatever it might be at my house, and we'll get acquainted and we'll have some fun together. If we can't do that, maybe there are some other things that we can do to build a relationship that are similar to that principle of breaking bread. And that really is all about giving, because when you have someone over in your home, what are you doing? You're serving them. There is a principle of service there that makes you humble and makes the other person humble as well. And humility, I think, is one of the founding virtues of meaningful relationships. It really allows them to grow. Yeah, so in doing so, if we can find ways to serve others, and that can be simply something like, I know what their challenge is, what their struggle is. I found this article online that I thought you might be interested in reading because it's right up your street. Yeah. It might even be something as simple as sharing a joke. You know, I understand from what we were talking about last time we got together, you were feeling a little low or a little lonely because you're stuck in quarantine again. Yeah. So I just wanted to share this joke. I found it funny. Maybe it might lift your spirits and make your day a little bit better, a little bit brighter. Doing little things like that build the relationships of trust, build the rapport, build the friendships, and help us get into a position where people are willing to slide. Does that make sense? Willing to slide from one point of view to another because they're now more open-minded. Here's another thing that we can do. So the governing principle we're talking about today is we want to be able to build friendships, because building our business is really built on making more connections with others. We do that through repeated connectivity. How do we have that repeated connectivity? We build friendships. We don't just bombard them with facts, yeah, in an effort to persuade them, because we know that doesn't work. We see the statistics. We've seen it happen in our own business. We see it in our own relationships outside of NECAN when we have differences of opinion and someone doesn't want to change their mind. Yeah. So, because it's really hard if we're saying, I want you to change your views, and in a consequence, become socially lonely as a result, because you're going to have to disconnect with your tribe. Yeah, that's a big ask. So if we can help them connect with a new tribe or with more people that says you don't have to forego social isolation for changing your views. In fact, you can be welcomed into a new tribe where there is more connectivity, there is more like-mindedness, there is more kindred spirits. There are more people willing to embrace you and to accept you, to love you, to care for you, and to be with you and to agree with you on this point. Then it becomes a little easier and a little bit more persuasive. I want to share one last point here as to how a tool that we can use in building relationships, but not just building relationships, actually breaking down barriers. And it's an old tool, but it works really well. And the tool is sharing books. Now that might sound like an unusual suggestion or recommendation, but let me share with you some context here. If you're having a conversation with someone and people have to carefully consider their status and their appearance in choosing whether or not they agree or disagree, then they're going to want to save face and avoid looking stupid. Yeah, have you found that in a direct conversation when you've got differences of opinion? When confronted with an uncomfortable set of facts, the tendency is often to double down on a current position rather than to publicly accept being wrong. Wouldn't you agree? I've done that myself, yeah, much to my own frustration afterwards. Yeah, but you want to be right versus stupid. Yeah, and often if we're having to prove ourselves, having to accept that we're wrong on a point, that's what we're going to do. We're going to double down. That's what other people do. Arguments are like a full frontal attack on a person's identity. However, if you offer someone a book, then that's like slipping the seed of an idea into a person's brain and then letting it grow on their own terms. I'll say that again. Arguments are like a full frontal attack on a person's identity. But giving someone a book where it doesn't have to be in a confrontational setting, like a social situation where they need to defend their position and be socially accepted and right, giving them a book to read in their own time, in their own place, in their own privacy, is like planting a seed in someone's brain and then letting it grow on their own terms. There's enough wrestling going on in someone's head when they're overcoming a pre-existing belief. They don't need to wrestle with it with you as well. Okay, so this is something that we can look at as we build these relationships, as we look at ways to serve. Are there books that we know, that we love, that we recognize can really influence people's paradigms in a positive way? Yeah, that can just plant a seed, help people to think a little differently, and come away going, you know what? I've never looked at entrepreneurialism that way before. You know what? I've never considered really taking ownership of my own life in that way before. Maybe I do want to be more proactive now. Maybe there is something I should do. And boy, if you love that book, you're going to love this one. Check it out. Have a read. Delve in. Yeah. Tell me what you think. Lend the books. Ask for them to give them back so that you can get the book back and to give to someone else but also so that you've got a moment now to connect and to follow up. Say, this book. I love this book. I've got to lend it to you. I can't give it to you because it's important to me. I do want to get it back. Read it over the next week or so. Bring it back to me. Tell me what you think. You've got a reason to follow up. You've got a time frame to follow up, and you've got an opportunity for them to connect, to read, engage, and then consider and reflect. And then, like I said, that can be a great door opener in someone's mind to helping them understand new concepts and change paradigms. Because like I said, people don't jump from one radical idea to another. They tend to slide from one idea to another. It's a process. And the way that they slide is through relationships, through friendships. Facts don't change people's minds. Friendships do. Yeah. So as we spend our time right now looking at how we can build friendships, recognize we can do that by breaking bread, but we can use that principle of breaking bread together as a metaphor as well, because we can't always do that with 100 people, for example, over the course of a couple of months. That's impractical. But we can take that principle and philosophically, metaphorically break bread with people by providing opportunities to serve them. When we serve others, we break bread with them. When we serve others, we break down barriers. When we serve others, we open up hearts and minds. When we serve others, we build friendships. And if you want that extra edge and advantage as people are sliding down the slide towards a better way of thinking and believing and being, then give them a good book to help nudge them along, to give some insights that put it a little bit more articulately than what we might be able to by ourselves, to give a third-party validation at the position of an authority, an expert in the field that validates what we have and what we're doing and what's going on here. But as we do this, I promise you, we'll have so much more experience, successful experience in building our businesses and getting improved results. And critically, most importantly, as a result of all of that, we're building better friendships, we're changing people's lives, and we're making a real difference. What we're doing here is helping people discover the greatness of what we have on our plates, the true potential of what we have, both in form of business opportunity, in form of balance with the 5 pillars of wellness, in terms of humans being more, becoming the best version of ourselves, in terms of personal well-being and healthy living. There are so many advantages on the table that Nikan offers. There are so many things. We're offering people a lot of good, a lot of good. And we need to help them get there, but they don't get there in a single bound. They don't get there when we bombard them with facts. They get there because they discover that we love them. And they learn that as we start to serve them. And if you don't love them instinctively, or if you don't love them yet, then get to know them better. Yeah, spend time serving. I believe this is a principle that a conclusion that I've come to in life, and I'll finish on this point, that I've often looked at my own children, being a father of 8, when I've had little babies that are so beautiful and gorgeous, but at the same time incredibly inept on their own. They can't survive without a parent's help. Yeah, they can't walk, they can't communicate other than cry. All they can do is cry. All they can do is eat when you feed them and go to sleep when you put them to bed, right? But they need your guidance and all of that. Otherwise, they die, they perish. They are everything to us, but at the same time, by themselves, they're nothing. Yeah, they can't survive a week. And I've often looked at that and thought, how is it that humans are like that for such a long time? And with the way that society is going now, I'm sure there's parents of older children that are going, yeah, they're 30 years old. I'd have thought they'd have left the nest by now. Yeah, but they're still at home being fed by the mother bird. But there are other creatures. Turtles have fascinated me, how they break the shell and immediately come out and walk. Not only do they walk, but they walk instinctively in the direction of the ocean. And then they go right into the ocean and they immediately start to swim with no guidance, no training, no support or anything. That blows my mind. And I thought, why can't people be like that? Why can't we be born and immediately kind of stretch our arms and then put the child down and he or she walks straight to the fridge and gets themselves their own drink, right? Or fixes their own breakfast, so that the mom and dad can have a rest, right? They don't do that. Well, that would be wonderful if they did. One of the reasons I think that doesn't happen for humanity, and that's because this is because I believe there is a grand design behind it all. But I think the reason behind that is what happens is it forces the parents to give everything and to sacrifice everything for their children. What good parent hasn't sacrificed everything for their children? We do. We sacrifice our own lives in terms of time and money, resources, energy, love, worry, anxiety, stress, all of that stuff. We give everything to our kids. And as a consequence of that, there is nothing in the world that compares to the love of a parent. Doesn't compare. And I think that love is in direct proportion to the sacrifice and the investment in the relationship that is initially imposed upon them at birth, but then becomes a way of life and being thereafter. I really think that's the case. And I think there is something that we can take from that as we look at building our businesses, that we might not love everyone instinctively like we do our children. We might not need to serve them as much as we do our children. But if we do strive to love, if we do strive to know and understand people, if we do strive to serve them and find out what their challenges are and their needs are and look for ways to make a difference in their lives, we will build relationships that are authentic, real, meaningful, valuable. And in that position, we will then be given the chance, the privilege by that other person. They will give us the privilege of then making a difference in their lives and persuading them to change their minds. Until we've done that, it won't happen. So my invitation today is, as we look at our goals for 2022, and we look at what we want to achieve in our business and in our relationships with others, let's drill it down to the monthly, weekly, and then daily activities that all lead us in the right direction. And it will always come down to finding people to communicate with, to build relationships with, and then talk to as many people as we can and go from there. It always comes down to that. The way forward is not to sell with facts. It's to make friends. What a great business that demands of us to be great friends to others, to be kind to people, to serve them, to love them, to understand them, to help them, and to change their lives in some meaningful way. What a great cause. What a great reason for being in business. Let's remember that and feed that into our reason for growing next year. And let's feed that into our vision. What do I want to achieve? How many more friendships would I like to make? How much of a difference would I like to make in the lives of other people? Let's put it in that context. And in doing that, I'm confident we'll have not just a better outcome, but a thoroughly rewarding, uplifting, and inspiring experience as a result. So I hope this has been helpful today, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go out, make friends. Friendships make the difference, not the facts. Thank you all very much. Have a great week, and I'll see you next week. Take care, everyone.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.